Hi, I'm Paul. For the last couple of videos that I've done, I've been talking about the mind. Not the brain, but the mind. Or at least the mind that we're conscious of. And what I've talked about is we have two different minds. These two different minds are working both at the same time. But our awareness can only focus on one mind at a time. In the last video, I talked about the mind which thinks. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the mind which feels and sees. This is a harder mind to actually find because a lot of us are so occupied in thinking. The trouble is our awareness can only look at one mind at a time. And if we're thinking all the time, then it tends to focus on the thinking mind. When we find space in between our thoughts, our awareness can go onto the mind that that feels and sees. Now, I spoke about the thinking mind before and explained how that works. But the feeling and seeing mind sees things differently, let's say. The thinking sees the world through thought. And the feeling sees through seeing. What I mean by seeing, I also find that these two minds have memory. And the feeling and seeing side seems to be a lot better memory than the thinking. But if I try to go into a memory of my past through the feeling and seeing, the whole thing doesn't come to me at once. I have to relive the event in my, imagination or wherever it is. But I can relive the event pretty well. Let's say I look at something that pops in my mind, say, 3 years ago. Somebody who was acting a little bit suspicious and I was very curious. I could go back to that now and I can relive it, I could watch it, I could see the face, I could see the way the smile is, the way their eyes are, the bounce in the step, slightly stood on tiptoes, the way that they walked. And I can completely relive that. Not through words, I just watch it and observe it. The one thing I can't do is tell you what clothes they're wearing, what colour the floor is. I can't recall them. Just more movements, things which are probably more done by, let's say, emotion. It seems that my thought side does all the rest, like colour and clothes. But just in this side, I can't do that. When I looked at this the other day, I started questioning, well, if only this can see, let's say, things of life, living, does this also include things in nature, trees? So I tried having a look to see if I can look at any past memories to do with trees, just by seeing and feeling my way through. It seemed that I could. Not as well, not as detailed, but I could. I also took myself back to when I was stood by a waterfall and a river. I could also do the same, not as detailed. And then I thought, well, can I do this with objects? But I can't. It just seems that this side of feeling my way through seems to only feel things that are alive. Whereas the other side of my mind recalls memories through thinking, through descriptions. Perhaps some I've been taught in a class or something. Now, I know it's harder to find this thinking and seeing mind. And that's perhaps because we spend too much time thinking. But if we stop our thinking In the space in between thoughts, we can find this mind, let's say through going into nature, maybe meditating. There's also something else which stops us from going into this as well, and that's sin. Now, when I talk about sin, I don't just mean something really horrible that you've done, even simple little things like lying. Pretty much anything that just avoids the truth. Now, because this feeling and seeing mind feels, the way that it views memory is through feeling. And there's many things that I don't want to re-feel. So through ignorance, I try to run away, try to overthink, which means that I don't focus on the side of my mind that feels. I focus on the side of my mind that thinks. It gives me psychological security, just to try and run away through ignorance. See, the trouble is, if I stop thinking, I lose this security, and the ghost of the past comes to face me. Now, this idea of sin, we can say that this thinking, not thinking, I keep saying that, sorry, feeling and seeing mind is our soul. Now, the soul flowers when the thought stops. Now, when I talk about sin, when we do sin, we essentially sell our soul to the devil. Now, I think most of us have done this. Maybe not by choice. You see, once you get caught up in it, it's hard to kind of get back and get your soul back. But for an example of how this sin works, let's just say I was approached by a gang, and the gang wants me to join their gang. And they say, well, first you have to do something for us, and then you can join. Now, at the moment, I've still got my soul. Not sold it. But let's say they tell me to do something which is wrong. I don't know, burn a house down, whatever. The moment I've done this, I've sold my soul to the gang. The gang now hold my soul. I now rely on them to keep my sense of psychological security. So I join the gang. They all egg me on, tell me, well done, you know. This is a cruel world, so we've got to stick up for ourselves, give us all the excuses. Now, as long as I've got that support in that direction, they also carry my sin. I don't need to relive it, as long as I keep going forwards. Now the trouble is, I can't leave the gang. So if I leave the gang, I have to leave with my sin. And that means I've got to either keep busy with thought, or I find peace and have to face the ghost. Now, I suppose I give a more extreme example there, but let's just say, for instance, you go and join the army. Now, in the army, you go to war, and perhaps you do some pretty bad things at war, and the sergeant holds your sin. The army holds your sin. The nation. I didn't do it because I chose to do it. Somebody else told me to do it, so they carry my sin. And then the moment I leave the army, I have to take my sin with me. An emotional connection with people becomes quite hard. Now, like I was saying, this side of the mind thinks and feels. We just focus on the feeling part. You remember me saying that it has a memory. But this memory, I have to relive the event. to see it, to understand it. But you see, if I've been persuaded into doing some things which, let's say, are against my true nature, and this means I have to try to avoid the feeling side, because I don't want to face the ghost. I think this is the whole idea of kind of going to therapy, I guess. So the trouble is, we get trapped. Our only escape from our own mind of reliving the event through feeling is thought, the ego. See, the ego works in just a small area of the mind. It also holds the whole mind there. So my awareness can't go to the feeling side to relive an event because it's occupied by thought. So I'm trying to escape a whole sense of feeling. Thought can give me thought-based feelings, not true feelings. When I say feelings, these feelings are slightly different to what thought produced, but I'm not going to go into that. I think the whole idea of what we're all trying to do with this spirituality stuff is to try and find our soul. We're all afraid to relive our past. Not for the sake of doing things what are really wrong, but this whole life sways you towards thought, towards the ego. Spent your whole life neglecting your true self. Anyway, I think I've run out of things to say, so I'll just leave it there. So thanks very much for listening. Take care.